Okay, folks, that's a couple of minutes past 4, and there's just one or two coming on. I think we'll make a start. Welcome to the Mid-Scotland ILG webinar. Normally, you'd be welcomed by the chair of the regional group, it is Simon Hart. But unfortunately, Simon can't make it this afternoon, so you're stuck with me. For those of you who don't know me, my day job, well, my name's Andy Leach, and my day job is Deputy Chief Exec of Confor. But I'm also the executive to the Industry Leadership Group and have been for a number of years. And it's that ILG that actually secures the funding to help us actually bring these kind of events together, and the funding comes from Scottish Forestry. Just like to mention the event is being recorded, and then it will eventually go into the ILG website so that you can dip back in and see the presentations or share the link with colleagues and friends. We would like to focus these events on research and development, topical things for the industry and innovation. And tonight we're focusing on forest nurseries. As we all know, this is a core segment of our industry. It supplies the material that will provide kind of future habitats and, of course, more importantly, in my view, maybe timber production. This has been realised by the public and private sector over the last few years, and certainly there's been a lot of financial support offered to nurseries in that time. And we're about to see how well that sector has responded to that by basically adopting innovative technologies and systems. So tonight you're going to see or hear about these activities. We'll have 5 speakers, so it's quite a packed agenda. There will be time for questions at the end of each presentation. I would ask, if you do have a question or you think of a question as you listen to the speaker, pop it into the chat, and then we'll pick up on those after the presentation. So I think that's everything covered just now. So the first speaker is Peter Livingston, who is going to talk to us about the EU Aspen project.
Thanks, Andy. I'll just share my screen. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, but it's not in full. That's it now.
That's it. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Livingston, the co-founder and CEO of AIA Enterprises. We're a small social enterprise environmental charity based in Lochlannick in Renfrewshire. We've been going for 10 years. And I suppose our USP, if you like, is Aspen, hence the name AIA, which is the old Gaelic name for Aspen. So I'm going to talk a bit about what we've been doing with Aspen over the years. We maintain a small specialist nursery near Bishopton. So it's the only native poplar in Scotland, the trembling poplar. But why focus on Aspen? So I'll talk initially about what got started and why the interest. Well, first and foremost, it's rarity, and few nurseries were actually really historically growing it, certainly in any quantity or clonal diversity. I'll come on to that term later. So pretty rare, especially in the south of Scotland. But most importantly, most of these points are single trees, rarely found as kind of continuous woodlands, if you like. But also, not just that's rarity, but we at an early stage understood the potential of aspen in the forestry industry as well as in native woodland creation. And you only have to look kind of elsewhere in the world. Its rarity here is in contrast to elsewhere, where it's a keystone species and widespread. In fact, the most widespread species in the northern hemisphere. It's the largest living organism on Earth, an aspen clone in Utah, 100 acres, a single clone. But also its productiveness and usefulness. I mean, you only have to look in Eastern Europe, where you have industries based on aspen feedstock. In Estonia, paper making, for example. And it seems that aspen produces a fine quality paper, much superior to softwoods. So that stimulated our interest right from the start. And putting these together, we developed an enterprise, I suppose, looking at aspen and how we can get more of it grown in Scotland. So starting from a very low baseline, this is our local aspen tree, the Renfrewshire Heights, typical scenario. So first and foremost, we have to look at conservation of what's left. So understanding its rarity, well, rarely produces seed. You get these catkins every now and again after a hot, dry summer. So it's a clonal tree. Vegetative propagation is the way to go. It sustains itself by suckering like that. Of course, too many deer and sheep, etc. I won't go into all the land management issues in Scotland, but you can understand why it's not more common. So it's been isolated. Surviving clones are often single trees, as I say, isolated from one another, can't cross-pollinate. And yet stunning landscapes can form. You know, if we were to get this out in the countryside much wider, you can make out the individual clones there. That's naturally occurring. Aspen clone often occurring in the boreal forest, you know, in the together with spruce. So you can start understanding how it could coexist with softwood plantations, for example, as an edge, at least. And that clonal variation is important because you know, we need to preserve these surviving clones, but also these date back to the Ice Age. So, you know, it's all about preserving those genetics, and there's significant diversity between each clone, which can determine, you know, growth rates, form, timber qualities, even the chemistry in the timber, and that dictates what flora and fauna can even live in these trees. You know, bark texture, etc., are extremely important. And since we've been growing this now in a nursery, I mean, you can pick out this clonal variation quite distinctly, and it fascinates me just looking at all these trees put together. So first step we took was to develop a clone collection, collecting material from the wild and other collections. Here he's at Forest Research's own clone garden, and bringing them back to our nursery. It took me to wonderful places, remote places, Ailsa Craig and up in the Highlands, or Arran, right over, getting as many different clones as possible. And in fact, Forestry Commission, Galloway District sponsored us to collect every surviving clone in the district. That's Galloway, South Ayrshire and Arran. Total number 80. And they then funded the sort of mass production of those. I feel like I'll come on to that in a wee while. But manually, you take root cuttings, propagate them in a fish box. So this is a typical kind of nursery scenario, low-tech solution, but at small numbers, labour intensive. You're not really going to reforest Scotland this way. But it was important to preserve and represent all the clones, you know, together in a collection. And growing stock trees to 3-4 years in air pots, it allowed us to then take root cuttings and enable ongoing propagation without having to hike up a mountain, which is a great benefit. Here we are here. And it can be done, but it lends itself to kind of volunteering and, you know, community projects and schools, etc. And it's kind of something a bit unusual. So, you know, it's something we do. But we've had a lot of interest from the academia. So our clone collections, I suppose, are kind of scientific resource. We've had visits from all over. And all these institutions are running kind of genetic research. UME in particular, notably looking at genetic variation from Britain across to Russia in the aspen population. So quite fascinating stuff that is really quite significant. And we've genetically fingerprinted the Galloway set of clones, obviously to ensure there's no duplicates and that they are genuinely native. Came across some interesting results. Shows you how aspen gets around the country. In this case, the duplicates weren't planted. It's just simply natural processes at work where kind of roots have been dislodged and sort of floated down the Clyde. So quite interesting there. So I mentioned micropropagation earlier. I mean, this is how we mass produce aspen, and it's been going on for some time with the big nurseries growing a small number of clones. But in collecting our our Galloway set of clones and the support from the Forest Commission enabled a large number of clones to start getting into production. So initially Micropropagation Services in Leicestershire had a track record of this, but then ultimately quickly got a Scottish lab, Gentech, on board to grow our Scottish clones. Plant tissue culture is the way. Sheila later on will be telling you all about this in more detail, but and I won't go into that just now. But tree nursery in a petri dish, basically, we get small mini plugs in the spring that we then grow on. But we, as a small social enterprise, can't really grow in bulk. So basically, we subcontract this growing work to the large nurseries when we've used Alba, Cheviot, and recently Mailer to do this for us. Numbers have grown exponentially through the Forest Commission's own support and then their own stock required for their sites, up to a maximum of 250,000 a year then produced. So this was really satisfying over many years building this up. Single trees, and as I say, a population of 80 trees, then we're now seeing hundreds of thousands at last being produced of this clonal set, up to a maximum production rate of 250,000 a year. So very satisfying from a conservation point of view, and of course mixing these clones together, male and females from all the region put together to offer and maximise the potential of cross-pollination in the future to stimulate seed production, which is the ultimate goal, really. So here's the little plugs we get in the spring, and we've subsequently been supplying all over, whether it's the private forestry companies, commercial forestry, to conservation interests. So putting aspen back into the countryside, that's our key aim. And then on the back of that, really stimulating interest through raising its profile and showing people just what it can do and why it's important, why it's such a useful tree. So very satisfying and a kind of quite a proud moment in the organisation when we celebrated the 1,000,000th aspen being planted in a little ceremony locally. All the aspen that was produced through the supply chain we helped set up. So as I said, a very useful tree, and not to go into too much detail, but because of its suckering, very widespread laterally extending roots. It's a riparian species, so brilliant for riverbank stabilisation. Suckers that mad, especially if eaten by beavers. So beavers actually stimulate aspen growth counterintuitively. So we've been doing loads of riparian planting, almost in advance of the beaver expansion. You can see some aspen trees here at Cullen being gnawed by beavers. The same way as slopes, great for slope stabilisation, but also remediating contaminated land and vacant derelict land. I mean, it's pretty much the pioneer species. It will grow anywhere. I mean, you saw me up halfway up a mountain. It grows from the tree line to the coast and everywhere in between, wet ground, dry ground, scree. So, it's really that's how we got our initial funding. Through a proposal to trial it in post-industrial sites in the Central Belt, and we're still looking at that. Indeed, we're planting up open cast sites across East Ayrshire through the Coalfields Landscape Partnership, involving volunteers and refugees even. Doing field trials, looking at just planting it direct in colliery spoil, in some cases adding mycorrhizae amendments there. So, it can do wondrous things. Great in the uplands, high rainfall, totals and acid conditions. It's one of the most palatable species. So, those deep and externally extending roots can draw up all important minerals. So it's brilliant at kind of regenerating the land, basically. So in terms of historically deforested land, a brilliant tool for kind of rewilding, if you like, not just on post-industrial sites. I mean, this is what it can do in the Cairngorms, massive trees at high elevations. So great potential. And because of that palatability, agroforestry we see as one of the key uses, high nutrient density. It's a traditional system that's used in Norway, drying aspen branches, and for forage. So we've been planting some trials, obviously growing interest in agroforestry. And of course, biomass, it's a fast growing tree, so great potential with short rotation forestry as well. And I say that these are the key uses elsewhere. You know, you get fibre boards and chipboards being mass produced in the States with aspen timber, as well as Eastern Europe. So, you know, big potential, and mixed silviculture, you know, not just as an edge and a nice thing as a native screen, but actually mixed in intimately within conifers. And this again is practiced elsewhere. And we think this is has great potential to kind of mitigate the impacts, if you like, of sort of monoculture forestry. Aspen can keep up, has similar yields to, you know, well, the better clones to Sitka. So it's seen as one of the key species in mixed silviculture, and this is a key thing that we're really trying to showcase and promote. So we're planting our own mixed trials here at a community forest near Bishopton. Planting it with Sitka and Norway and Scots pine in little 3-hectare plots. Just having a bit of fun, really, and trialing different methods. But we've had some interest as well from Till Hill and their sites here at Croft Head, putting in mixed silviculture. And indeed, there's a growing kind of list of mixed silviculture trials that I'm now building up, and I'm happy to share the location of all these sites. So we're getting a lot of interest from the forestry companies, forest research themselves are planning some mixed trials. So to me, this is very exciting as a conservation as well as promoting the use of aspen. And they are key uses. It's a chicken and egg. Get the resource in place, then hopefully these uses will come, whether it's, as I say, paper making, but these other niche applications as well. There are good products that you can make with aspen. And we've had a local academic here, Michael Jarvis from Glasgow Uni, write papers on the potential of aspen timber. Well, habitats, of course, goes without saying. I mentioned earlier the high conservation value of aspen. So because it's rare, of course, all the associated flora and fauna, especially the sort of exclusively related stuff, is particularly rare red data book species. So we need to get that in place, and hopefully some of these things will expand and be reintroduced. But our most exciting initiative is looking at triploids. This is a recent project that's received some funding from the private forestry interests. So back in the 30s, a giant aspen was found in Sweden, and we stumbled across it in St Andrews Botanics, and of course, very interested in this. So this, of course, triploidy and naturally occurring sort of genetic aberration, if you like, extra chromosomes. So you have this natural vigour. The more you read about triploids, the more it really stimulates your interest, because not only have you this superior vigour, it seems that even form is improved over and above your average diploids, and even timber qualities apparently anecdotally are superior too. So my goodness, what a potential. If aspen's already good as a timber tree, if we can get triploids into the production system, well, maybe we can get more foresters on board. So this is what we're trying to do. So we tested all our collection, our national clone collection, which we maintain in the nursery, all 350 clones, which we now have, and we found, I think, about 10 triploids within that collection. But we put a call out to aspen enthusiasts and other bee nurseries growing aspen, and in total we've now found 20 triploids. So we of course want to focus on homegrown, native, local provenance triploids, as opposed to bringing in Baltic or Scandinavian. Not that might be an issue, and that's one to debate. But anyway, let's see what we've got. So we managed to find 20, and that was a good, that basically reached our target. And then we thought, well, we'll increase it to 30 by including also diploids. So we knew from previous trials and experience that, as I said, because of the genetic diversity, we had really good growing clones, fast growing, vigorous clones. So we'll include them too. And we've now got Mailer on board, which is really exciting, because that's the new development that Sheila will talk about. Getting these into micropropagation with a view then to start planting trials next year. And yeah, so it's a low percentage of the population that are triploids, but not every triploid is superior, if you like, is vigorous, but every superior plus clone tends to be a triploid, if you like. And that bit ahead of the diploids. So that's the first stage of the project, and we're keen to get some more funding to actually test all the properties, the timber properties, etc., of these triploids once they get planted. So that's a few years down the line. So keen to hear of any possible funding streams about that, and then of course getting into mixed silviculture scenarios as well, so down the line. So as I say, we're a small outfit, but always keen to work with partners as we have been doing, and keen to look at new partners and all this. We see this the triploids as an exciting way to get more on board. So yeah, that's me, and I think if allowed, I'm not sure about the time, but I'm happy to take any questions now if that's appropriate. Thank you.
Yes, Peter, there's plenty of time for questions. We did ask for some to be put in the chat. Right, there was silence because everyone was so intent listening to you. Are there any questions? Just raise your hand. While we're waiting, Peter, certainly you definitely piqued my attention. You've sold aspen to me, and certainly piqued my attention. You were talking about mixed aspen spruce moving forward. I mean, what is the ideal growing conditions then for productivity?
Well, I mean, ideal it would be, as with any sort of broadleaf tree, I suppose, nice thick brown earth soils and protected. But as I say, aspen, Scott McG Wilson wrote a paper about the key upland sort of broadleaf species for kind of upland reforestation, productive broadleaves, and of course that was downy birch and aspen, the two together. And of course, talking about improving birch stock, but as well as selective aspen clones. So, I think it's in these scenarios where other things will struggle in the marginal land where we really want to be diverting commercial forestry, after all, not taking up good agricultural land, where I think it's got a strong role to play.
Great, thanks. I've got one other thing, and then I see another question coming in on the wood properties testing. I know it's a few years away yet, but certainly there is an existing programme called the Strategic Integrated Research in Timber at Edinburgh Napier. We would certainly be interested in working with you there on timber properties. So we've got Derek MacDonald was really making a comment that price used to be a barrier to the sale of micro-propagated aspen. Is that still an issue?
Yes, I would say, well, I don't know how much of an obstacle it is. It's certainly more expensive than your equivalent broadleaf tree, i.e. a birch, or of course, a conifer. But it's trying to get across the benefits, and I suppose the longer term savings, if you like, if you're comparing it to obviously a conifer, the replant, restock costs, etc. It's a resilient tree in terms of disease, and of course as well as all this the productive nature of it. So it's getting that message across, really, paying up front, for the benefits long term, which of course is our planet and the environment. So we all benefit from that eventually.
Thanks. Yvonne Edwards is asking, do you have survival rates for the coalfield sites?
Early days, and we've had deer issues amongst all the other factors that's thrown at it. But early observations show actually very high survival rates. I mean, growth obviously is a different matter altogether, but first and foremost, we're just looking at survival. We're not looking at great forming, fast-growing trees. So, I mean, we're looking at, in some cases, about 80–90% survival, which is very encouraging. I need to get up there again actually and have a look. Glen Taggart was the site shown in the photos, but as I said, there's others as well, and I can share that information if anyone's interested.
Thanks very much. Adam, I don't know his second name, Adam, the guest, is asking for comments on climate change. I assume, how could that help climate change and how will survive climate change? I take it the question infers to.
Well, I suppose, not sure the angle there, but I mean, obviously a fast-growing tree locks in more, sequesters more carbon, and can extend the range of woodland cover because it will grow, you know, in lots of conditions. And I suppose its resilience and the clonal diversity is important, and I think that's where we can. I mean, we're doing projects in Cumbria, and of course, moving stuff up from the south is always seen as a good approach. So maybe we should be looking at Cumbrian clones as well, bringing them back up to Scotland. So. All these things, I think, will kind of lend itself and help that. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And one from Jamie, I think it is. How long before we will see seed orchards?
Well, I say Trees for Life are working on this just now. They have had some success in the polytunnel scenario. Stressing trees is what you have to do, get all the male and female together. It's a labour intensive technique, but it can be done, and it's maybe just a matter of scaling that up. We've always let them kind of focus on that, and we've taken a clonal approach simply because of the rarity of the initial, you know, the deplete population in the south. They've got more trees to play with up there, and I think it's something that we should be looking at. But as I say, let's just create natural seed orchards out in the wild, and we have seen flowering and seeding in recent years. Well, flowering, I should say. We're still not seeing locally here. And these are trees we planted 9-10 years ago, and now actually flowering, which is quite satisfying. But we've had all males and no females, unfortunately. But that time will come. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Peter. We'll get two more questions and then we'll move on. So one's from Rodney Shearer, and he's asking, is the provenance zone map of any relevance to aspen? Current production is 1.8 million aspen and is mostly from stand in 403.
Yes. Well, to answer the question, no. And I did show that picture simply because it happens to be the picture that was included as the base map in the Forest Research's survey work in the 90s. But the genetics research shows no. I mean, it's pointless really keeping to these seed zones. I mean, we still like to, have a general kind of local provenance of approach, but it seems research so far suggests that there's not the same, how would I say, geographical clines, if you like, compared to other species, and it's not so critical that we focus on small localized areas. The population is pretty. Someone give me the right word. Evenly, genetically homogeneous, although diverse, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Final one is from Patrick Hunter Blair. Are you doing any work with hybrid aspens?
No, we've always steered clear of hybrids. I know they have been used, in commercial forestry, and I believe there was some issues with disease and canker that was found. There was some actually at Forest Research's clone garden where we collected our native clones. They're very vigorous, sure. I think there's a very small number of clones really that are typically grown. So as a conservation organisation, we've just simply, well, that's not our bag. I'm not sure even where things are at with hybrid aspen, if they're still planted in large numbers. So yeah, we're going down the native route.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Peter. Thanks for the presentation and thanks for fielding quite a few questions. I know you're going to have to leave us about, is it 5 o'clock or so? So
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
hang around for a while.
I look forward to seeing the presentations eventually online. Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next presentation, which is from Brian Fraser and Andy Bailey, and they're going to talk about tape for trees. Now, can you stop sharing, Peter?
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, Andy, for allowing this presentation. First of all, let me introduce ourselves. Andrew Bailey to my left is the owner of UK Planter Solutions, and I'm a director of Oak Over Nurseries. We're both directors of Tape for Trees. The idea of this presentation is to take you through the process of taking a process which is used in vegetable production and integrating it into a forest nursery. The idea is for Andrew to give you a briefing on the technical side of tape, and for me to try and give you an idea of how that works within a tree nursery.
Yeah, that's great. Next slide then, please. Can we have the next slide up, please, April?
I have, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on slide 2. Is it not changing for you?
No.
Let me try again. You got it now?
I think so. So, yeah, as Brian said before, tree tape was developed from existing technology that we use within the vegetable and salad industry to combat a number of issues, speed of planting, availability of labour. So plant tape is a fully automated transplanting system that was predominantly designed for the salad industry and then developed into vegetables after that. It's a fast system, easy to use. It was designed by farmers and growers and built to withstand the elements while giving growers the reliability and precision needed to plant. So particularly for harvesting, we get a really uniform crop, and with that becomes the ease of harvest as well with mechanical harvesting. Next slide, please. Hang on. There we go. So the system has a number of benefits, the obvious one being labour saving. So a typical transplanting machine needs one tractor and 2 operatives on the back. We can have a 4th person for quality control, but not really needed. Another major benefit of the system is space saving. So each tray of plants carries 840 cells on a conventional tray. So we have a big saving there in terms of greenhouse space, transporting the plants, moving and handling. Another major advantage that we've developed more recently, so that we have the ability to provide a peat-free growing media. So that's a major benefit with trying to save peat. Saving the transport costs, obviously, so transporting plants around the country and stuff, just by the sheer number of plants that we can get on a lorry. Speed of planting, so on an average day, we can plant over 1 million plants in a day with 3 operators.
So let's just compare that with where we are or where we were, certainly traditional transplanting. Going back to when a Super Prefer was used and more recently a Basridge planting machine, you were talking about having 5 people sitting on the machine plus a tractor driver, and probably in an 8-hour day planting 50, 60, up to 70,000 in a day. If you compare that with using, so we say, automated transplanter machine using 3, 4, 5 cell plants, you're probably anywhere between 100 and 150,000 plants a day. With tape, we're up to 1 million plants a day. So you can see there's a massive saving in time. But what that really does help is in the nursery scenario, whereby you want your plants to be planted at relatively the same sort of timescale. The window for planting, given the weather, is getting shorter. So if you look at the equivalents, you know, we're 10 times quicker than planting even with a 345 cell machine. And that makes a fundamental difference to getting all the plants in one go.
The seeding process. So the seeding process is fully automated. We have two sowing lines now in the UK that are currently in Lincolnshire, and this enables us to sow large volumes each day. So we can actually stagger the sowings to whatever trays we want to lay in the nursery on that particular day. You'll see now the process of the material going through the sowing line. The seeding cup is coming down, placing the seeds into the pre-formed dibblings. The top layer is being struck down through heat and pre-applied adhesive to the material, and then goes through the system. It's cut into 21 individual zigzags. The machine then carries it backwards and forwards and stacks those into trays. The trays and go through into an extraction system, and then extract it out, and then come out at the end of the machine in stacks of 21. So at the end, nobody actually touches the material. It's all fully automated until the stacked trays come off the end of the line. So the seeded trays are then wetted and placed in a germination room before being transferred to the nursery. The trays are grown off the ground, either on tables or on bearers, to enable air pruning. And as we said before, 840 plants to a tray leads to obvious greenhouse space savings, labour savings due to handling, and everything else.
So compared with what was traditionally done with sowing seed outside in seed beds, using growing space inside that maximizes the seed and the germination of that seed, rather than having a field factor outside. We're seeing far better returns on a kilo of seed compared to what we would have been sowing outside. And again, that's obviously a benefit on cost as well.
So the trees are grown in the nursery under production, either glass houses or polytunnels, with a carefully prescribed growing regime depending on the variety of the trees.
So the glass house or polytunnel gives you that control of the environment, which allows you to apply fertilizer and water when required, certainly compared to what we've been facing in recent years outside. It does allow us to give feed when the plants require it, and water obviously at the same time, which, as I say, is compared with outside is a major benefit.
So weed control, we played around with a few projects this year down at Oakover. Stale seed beds being one of those with LPG. Obviously elsewhere, steam sterilisers and things have been used, with more and more chemicals being banned and not being made available to us. We're always looking at alternative options. So the plants are shipped to the field in stillages holding anywhere from 50,000 to 90,000 plants, depending on the size of the stillages. They're loaded up into the automated transplanter, like we said before, which usually with 3 members of staff. So as you can see in the video, we can work at quite high speeds, and we offer precision when planting as well. The machine is fully adjustable, so we conventionally plant trees with 6 rows, but it can be adapted to use 5 rows to be adapted to any configuration, basically to suit any harvesting techniques. So it's easily adjustable and can be set to any row widths. One thing that we've adapted for this season, and we looked at doing some trials with last year, was liquid fertilizer, again adapted from the vegetable and salad industry. So we can precision place variable rate liquid fertilizer underneath the plants when planting. So we can put starter fertilizer on just to give them a good start and get them going. So irrigation, due to the size of the cells and the fact that they're particularly small, it's very important to give them a good start in life. So good irrigation is key to the plants to get them established. So we use overhead booms generally when we're starting to get them established. But as you'll see later on the next slide, we are starting now to use drip irrigation. So with a shortage of water, drip irrigation has many advantages. So we've made some changes to the machine. So when we transplant, we can actually lay drip irrigation tape at the same time. So there's a massive labour saving cost once commissioned, the system is in place. So there's no need to move irrigation equipment. Obvious savings with evaporation, erosion. It's more sensitive on the plants. And we can use the system for fertigation. So we can apply liquid fertiliser down through the drip tape. And particularly with the challenges that we've all faced last year with a derogation when restrictions are in place, very often the use of drip irrigation is still permitted. So we have obvious advantages there. So you can see from the video, the drip tape is being laid in between the plants. We can lay it at a depth that's sufficient that we're still able to mechanically weed over the top of it without damaging the tape. So yeah, we can still mechanically weed and look after the weed control. Another advantage we have as well is that as we're planting, we can lay out the irrigation main by the side of it, so we can actually water the bed that we're working on and then move into the next bed as we're going along. So we have a constant water supply, so we're not having to wait for a full irrigation pool to be planted before we need to start applying water. So these are some of the examples of some of the plantings that we've done. Brian?
Yeah, as you can see, the seedlings and on the left-hand side that's the sort of size that we're planting at. The pocket is full of root. As you can see, it's coming out the bottom. That aids for very good establishment, especially when you're coupling that with the drip irrigation that's already embedded at the same time as the plants are put in the ground. That just gives you an idea of the growth rates that was available, and this is a week after planting. This is a sort of the level of stocking that we've had recently. Again, that's after a month's growth in the field.
You can see the obvious benefits on there of the root structure of the tape. It gets its taproot down very quick and forms a very vigorous fibrous root. Some of you guys will have actually seen these planted last year. So when we did the demonstration up at Ronald Christie's up in Scotland, This was the results after, what was this, Brian? After just a few weeks, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So harvesting, so these are some of the trials that we've harvested this year at Hokover. We're looking at many different harvesting techniques, full bed lifting, self-propelled harvesters, everything. So as we said before, the machine can be set up to any configuration to enable any form of harvesting that you want. These are some of the finished products. So these are some of the finished sticker that we finished from the first couple of trials.
Okay, so as you can see, that is basically the equivalent of a 1+1 plant measuring 20 to 40 centimeters, which shows the sort of growth rates that we're achieving. Clearly that's on down at Oakover in the south, where we probably have very good growing conditions. Having said that, you can see the root development on those plants as well, which matches the top growth quite easily. I think the benefit of from a nursery point of view is it's a whole transplanting system, which allows it other add-ons to be put to it, like the drip irrigation, fertigation, etc., that comes with that. So it's not just about a one idea of just planting quicker. It actually lends itself to far more operations because it's a one-stop system. And that's the double act done by Andrew and I. On to questions, please.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And that was a good double act. You did well. And for me, personally, I think it's fantastic to see the adoption, this tech transfer from vegetable growing, and in an industry where we're struggling to find enough people to do the jobs to adopt this new technology that's more effective and efficient. It's fantastic. Okay, folks, questions. I saw one coming in from Derek McDonald. He was basically asking you were given the figures of 840 plants per tray. He was just wondering how much that equated to per square metre.
Traceable.
Yeah, but you didn't think you were applying for a
Good question.
countdown.
Yeah, very good question from Derek, as always. I suspect we're talking about 1,200 or so a metre, something like that.
Okay, thanks. And Fiona is asking, have you done any other species or just Sitka?
No, so we've done Douglas fir, lodgepole pine, Scots pine. It's really those species which has high germinating seed, because that's the key. You need every pocket or as many pockets full as possible. So you need to be able to have high germinating seed. All the seeds obviously cleaned to the best available germination possible, but we need every pocket full to make it work.
Right. And Derek's following up, basically saying that he's identifying the saving of transplanting costs is obviously fantastic. Are the grading costs less due to greater uniformity, standardization?
So this year was our first proper year of grading in volume. We've certainly seen a more uniform crop. There's no doubt about that. And the other thing is, there's little or no J rooting at all. So again, it's more a case of just sizing. So yes, there is a saving in grading costs as well.
And he's keeping going. He's asking, have you done any back-end planting? Back-end transplanting.
So all this transplanting was done between a window of end of June to September. The
Right.
advantage of leaving it slightly later is that you end up with slightly bigger seedlings that you're transplanting. But again, the disadvantage is you have less time for those plants to get established before the winter comes in. The idea is we can get plants up to height for transplanting in between 13 and 14 weeks.
Great, thank you. And I'll ask one. I mean, what's your future goals for tape for trees?
So again, good question, Andy. I mean, from our point of view, as Oak Over Nurseries, we think we've proven concept. We think we've got a product there that works for us. And as costs continue to rise for labour, then we see this taking off more and more. So yeah, obviously we'd like more and more people to adopt it, but yeah, from a purely oak over point of view, that's the way we'll be going for those conifer species.
Great. Thanks. I think there's no more questions. Final call. No. Well, thank you very much, gents. You can relax now, and we'll move on to the next speaker. It's just a short. Yeah, so short section. We've got Jean there, who's going to just give us an update on the Scotland's Finest Wood Awards. And Jean, over to you.
Oops. Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon, everybody. I will just try and share my screen. See if this works. Oops, there we go.
Yeah.
So most of you may well have already heard of Scotland's Finest Woods. It's an annual, oh, it's gone straight through. I'll start that again. And play from start. It was just going to go straight through. Anyway, that gives you the list of the different categories. So there's 6 different categories of competition, with 11 competitions in all. The entries opened in January, and we can accept entries until the end of this month. So there's the Climate Change Champion Award, which is an overall award. Basically, I'm sure most people will have projects that may well would qualify for that category. Sorry for the dog barking in the background. There's the Community Woodland Award. So there's either one for small groups or large groups. And there's the Farm Woodland Award. Can I pause that? If I can pause that. That lets you see all the different categories. So the Farm Woodland Award, there's one for young people. So that's for people between 16 and 41. And it's open if they're involved in the management decisions of integrating farming and crofting into and woodland management. There is also one for anybody who is on working on a farm and a croft, and that is for the Lilburn Trophy. The woodlands should be over 2 hectares in size with a 40% canopy cover and at least 5 years growth. There's the new native woodlands, which is woodlands over a hectare in size, between 5 and 20 years of growth. There's the quality timber for new commercial woodlands, as well as a single stand or compartment and the whole forest and estate. And that has a primary management objective of high quality timber. And that woodland should be more than 10 hectares in size and shows multi-purpose forestry. And to inspire the next generation, so that we can have the foresters inspiring the next generation, inspiring the foresters, we've got the schools and early years competition. So there's a competition for kindergarten ages, and then for all the way through for schools. And if you would like to know more details, and find out about the entry form. It's a fairly short entry form, and we're very grateful to our volunteer judges who will then go and judge the shortlisted entries in April and May. And we hope that we will be able to have an event. In the past, it has been at the Highland Show to give out the prizes towards the end of June. And so if anybody would like to submit an entry, we're also obviously very grateful to all our delivery partners and supporters who help to make the awards possible. And so if you go and have a look at www.sfwa.co.uk, and you'll find all the details there. And if I can go back to that last slide, you can tell I'm not the one used to driving these. I usually just am elsewhere. Anyway, you've got my contact details. If you have any queries, please do make contact, and I look forward to receiving some entries from you all in due course. And I will stop sharing. If anybody's any questions, please ask. Otherwise, please just email me as well.
Great. Thanks very much, Jean, and look forward to seeing those entries once they come in.
Thanks,
Okay,
thanks,
no questions. Okay, right, thank you. All right, so next speaker is already on camera there. Jamie, over to you, and we look forward to hearing about the 5-row lifter.
Right, allow me just to try and fire this up now. At the beginning.
Yeah, we can. Well, I can see your slide, but not you're not in show.
Wait, if everything works, stop me if it's not working.
That's sure you're fine.
First, everybody, for those that don't know me, I'm Jamie Dewhurst at J&A Growers. We're based in Warwickshire, hardwood seedlings in the UK. Those that haven't heard of us, we actually only operate in the market of supplying other nurseries. So we're not actually, we don't supply commercial foresters. That would be through our customer base. So that's what we do here. Now, I'm about to show you a few. I wasn't going to, and Fiona was going to do it, but unfortunately, because I was meant to be going bin from health point of view. So anyway, harvesting of crops has traditionally been covered by either by hand or by single row lifters. In Brian's presentation, you saw one type of machine that was a single row lifter, lifting one row at a time, which in perfect conditions works perfectly. Can harvest 250,000 trees in a day, but unfortunately we in this sector have seen a significant change in weather patterns over the years, to the point now, I've got to move forward, right, hang on, found it. Okay. There's the result. A few of you on the call, I know the chuff is not, but with the changing weather patterns that we're getting longer and longer spells of wet conditions, meaning this sort of thing is happening. So this actually occurred 4 years ago in one of our fields. We were harvesting 1-year-old hawthorn. At the time, the trade patterns are changing. I've always in the back of my mind the dream of developing a harvester that can cope with these type of conditions, but also the ability to harvest trees using the same level of labour, but significantly more at a time. Now, I talk about one of the single row harvester in perfect conditions. It'll do 250,000 trees in a day. So our target was to develop a machine that would take all 5 beds out at one go. 4 years ago, or 5 years ago, I started scouting for a business that would partner up with us and develop such machine. Most people, bear in mind, whole bed harvesting of crop is widely used within veg industry and agriculture. My view was that it was just finding a business that was prepared to come and look at what we were doing and was it possible. And I also wanted to work with a UK company, not only from the point of view I can go and see them regularly, but also a language point of view. When I said something, they understood it. So eventually, out of the woodwork, I got a positive response from a company, Jones Engineering, who they specialise in developing bespoke, not only bespoke, but mainline veg kit, but also they would develop bespoke equipment. So after thrashing out the idea, them visiting our field, they were actually even in this field. They didn't quite see this happen, but they were in this field. Maybe they'd have walked away if they had seen that happen. But they didn't think what I was asking for was rocket science. So we spent a long time thrashing out the spec of what we wanted, and we came up, eventually we came up with an idea of what we were looking to develop. It took probably longer to design than it took to build. And you can see on the right of the screen there, during the construction phase, and the left of the screen is actually what was delivered here. Now, this is a work in progress project. And we have, this winter, this was actually delivered to us last end of May. We had actually deliberately left some crop in the ground so we could do some trials through the summer. Now, it's all very well trialing a product when ground conditions are bone dry, but this had to deal with the heat of battle when conditions would be very wet as well. So we did trials through the summer. We were quite confident that what the principle was working. So we got to the point of trialing this winter, and this is a short video of about a minute of once I get the thing to work. This was actually harvesting some 1 year Quercus robur, and we were actually out in the field harvesting for 1 hour and 10 minutes. We then took the back into the grading shed, and in that hour and 10 minutes we'd harvested 85,000 trees, because immediately we graded it. Now, it is work in progress. There are a lot of things still to be developed on it. One of the key things is the delivery of the plants. It's all very well getting potentially 5 times the number of plants out of the ground, but you've got to be able to handle that. And that is the process we're presently developing. This was, at the moment, you'll see the plants coming off on an elevator to the side where they're just being taken off and put in boxes. this is a sector that is going to be, that we're looking to semi-automate. We're looking to bundle the plants at this point to avoid having to have as many people on there. I say work in progress. We are extremely confident with this piece of kit. It is the first of its kind. There's been a couple of attempts, one in Germany and one in Holland. Both are extremely envious because we, despite them developing theirs 7 and 9 years ago, we're ahead of their processes as we speak. To give you an idea of the size of the piece of kit, it's actually 9 meters long. The cab raises up to allow the plants underneath it, and at fully raised, the cab is 5 meters off the ground. It has automatic steering on it. It has auto speed control, so if you speed up, everything speeds up, the belts speed up, and whatever. Now, this was, we were extremely grateful. We got funding from the Scottish Government under the Harvesting and Processing Grant. We managed to wheedle 50 grand out of them for that. But ultimately, where I see the capital cost ending up is at about £400,000. Now, if you say it quickly, it doesn't sound too bad, but actually, if you take a single row lifter that, like the one that was on the back of the tractor that was stuck, you bought one of them nowadays, they're 105,000 euros. You put a tractor into it, you're talking another 60,000 quid. So you're 160,000 pounds for machinery that will lift one row. Well, we're looking at 400,000 pounds for a machine that will lift five times as quick. What I would say, the whole point, the other thing, major issue that we're having is labour. Yes, you can see there are 6 people, in fact, involved in this. Ultimately, that is why we're trying to bundle it, so it will end up being a 3-man operation rather than our present harvesting, which is carried out by 2 people. And frankly, that is pretty well all I've got for you today. And yeah, that is the single row, the 5-row harvester that we have developed.
Fantastic, Jimmy. Thanks very much. And just shows you again what innovation can do. Right. Questions. Mr. McDonald again. He's asking, how do you control the depth of the front end of the machine? It's easier on the flat, but trickier on the slope.
The front end of the machine is actually, there's auto depth control, so it has a depth sensor which runs along the surface of the soil within the rows, and it controls the depth of the share that is running underneath the plants.
Right. Can I ask, I mean, have you got a kind of timeline when you think you'll have it cracked?
When do we want to have it cracked? We would like to have this solved by this next winter. The discharge side of it. The harvesting side works, as it is the discharge side. Our biggest problem has been which has stopped us doing trials this winter, is we haven't managed to find a time that we could pull people out of the grading shed to take out and trial the machine without reducing our grading capacity, and demand has been such that we couldn't afford to reduce the number of people in the grading shed. So our intention is, we're actually talking to 2 separate companies. One company that actually puts a sticky tape round bundles of bananas. We see that as the whole point of putting them in bundles is you retain the orientation of the plants. And so when the plants get to the grading shed, it actually, if the orientation of the plants is maintained, it'll actually speed up your grading shed between 5 and 10%, rather than just having them randomly put in boxes. Everybody spends a long time picking plants up, turning them round. It also means that one person can take those bundles off and pack them into boxes very quickly. So we're talking to someone over that, and also another company that has developed a bundler actually for timber. But we're running into a bit of a brick wall with them because, as they pointed out, our machine is working outside and they won't warranty their piece of kit in an outside environment.
Right. Okay, thanks very much. Derek's asking, so you've got the low pressure lifter, but what about the takeoff trailers and the weight that you'll accumulate by lifting your 5 rows at one go?
Good point, Derek. God, you remember your time in the nursery trade, don't you? What I would say is, because the tractor and trailer that is driving alongside is actually driving on wheelings that have been there all summer, there is no issue. The moment it steps off those wheelings onto land that you have just lifted, that is when you get into a problem. But, you know, from our point of view, we actually have a tractor that is mounted on tracks anyway. So we would be using that, but I wouldn't expect everybody to do that. So as long as it is, the design of it is such that you will harvest one bed and the bed next door will not be touched, and then the tractor and trailer will be driving on the wheelings that were a further bed over. I hope that's self-explanatory, or I hope you understand that, Derek. If not, give us a call.
Yeah, I'm sure he will, as you say, stone easy stuff. Okay, no more questions from you'll be glad to hear that, Jamie. Nope. Well, thank you very much. And again, as I say, another quite inspiring innovation. Let's hope you get it correct in the time scale you get into. Okay, folks, right, so we'll move on to the next presentation, and it's Sheila McCartan of Mailer Nurseries, and she's going to talk to us about trees from test tubes. Over to you, Sheila.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay.
And we can see your slides.
Okay.
Right, thanks.
Sorry, so
We can see them, yes.
okay, as the layout or properly?
Yeah, no, we can see them properly.
Okay, great. So my name's Sheila McCartan. I'm the Science Research and Development Manager at Mailer Forest Nurseries, and the main aim of my role is to manage and to future-proof our somatic embryogenesis lab, which plays an important part of our tree breeding program. Have you moved on to the second slide?
I haven't. Don't know about anyone else.
Not yet. I seem to be able to navigate for you, so just shout when you can't.
That's it now.
Okay, so approximately 90 to 120 million trees are required each year to meet the government's annual planting targets of 30,000 hectares. But there's several potential barriers, including the nursery supply chain, simply because it takes between 2 to 4 years to produce plants depending on the species and the product specification. And as forestry is a long-term investment, it's important not only to plant the right tree in the right place for the right purpose, but also to plant improved planting material where possible to ensure that good quality timber is produced with shorter rotation cycles so as to lock up as much carbon as possible as part of the net zero carbon strategy. Tree breeding, therefore, is critical so as to capture the genetic potential of a population and to adapt to a changing climate with associated risks, such as pests and pathogens, and also drought, amongst many others. Now, usually a number of so-called plus trees are selected from the natural or gene population for traits such as rapid growth, good form with regards to straightness and branching, and also good quality wood, particularly for density and stiffness, which ensures high quality yields of sawn logs. So scion is collected from the plus trees and then grafted onto rootstocks to form the breeding population. And then progeny, or the breeding population, are tested under field conditions to generate breeding values relative to the industry benchmark QCI, also known as Haida Gwaii. These progeny are open pollinated, that is, they are half sibs with a known mother, but a random father, which may be from within or outside the breeding population. And the breeding trials are important because they validate the genetic worth of the individual plus tree selections, which in turn underpin the establishment of seed orchards. So seed orchards are then established to produce large crops of high quality seeds, which enable genetically improved plant material to be transferred from the breeding population to the production population. So seed orchards are essentially factories where the genetic gain is packaged and delivered to nurseries for the production of genetically improved seedlings, which in turn are dispatched to forest managers. In forestry, most plants are raised from seeds. Due to wind pollination, however, not all potential genetic gains are realized because some clones produce large quantities of pollen, while others produce very little, resulting in uneven genetic contributions to the seed orchard. In addition, sometimes the pollen is from outside the seed orchard, resulting in background contamination. Seed production also varies from year to year due to the weather, resulting in supply and demand issues for traders and nurseries. So nursery managers often do control crosses to capture the genetic potential of a family. This is known as family forestry because each of these seeds within the cone will differ slightly, much like brothers and sisters, due to genetic segregation and recombination. Controlled pollination is a very time-sensitive and labor-intensive process. Each year, we collect, test, and then store the pollen or selected clones until required the following year. And then in early April, we isolate the female flowers using cellophane tubes with sponge bungs at each end. A few weeks later, we inject pollen into cellophane tubes, usually 3 times over a period of a week or so. And once the cone bracts have closed, we then remove the cellophane tubes to allow for further cone development. But these elite seeds are in short supply due to the labor-intensive and time-consuming nature of controlled pollination and the very narrow window for success. Usually the elite seeds are used to produce stock hedges, which form the backbone of traditional vegetative propagation by cuttings. But this process from a single seed to thousands of cuttings often takes several years. So this schematic shows a timeline comparing traditional and advanced vegetative propagation. At the top, you have VP and below you have somatic embryogenesis. If we do a cross in April 23 to produce an elite seed, which we sow in April 24, to produce seedlings, which are then our stock plants, we take cuttings, which are inserted in January 27, lined out in July 27 to form stock hedges. We take cuttings from the stock hedges in January 31, line them out in July 32, and they're ready for dispatch to customers in December 33. If you look at somatic embryogenesis, we do the same cross in April 23, but if you skip the stages right to the end, you can see that we have plants ready for dispatch in December 26. So the bottom line is that the turnaround time from elite seed to plant is about 6 to 7 years shorter using somatic embryogenesis compared to cuttings. So what is somatic embryogenesis? So somatic embryogenesis is an artificial production of thousands of clonal embryos from a single seed. It's a complex process with many stages, all interdependent. Cell line initiation, callus proliferation, embryo induction, maturation, germination, and then hardening or full acclimation. So the process starts in July when we harvest immature cones from our control crosses, excise the embryos under a microscope, and place these embryos onto initiation media containing a very powerful auxin 2,4-D, which triggers the production of callus. Callus is simply a mass of undifferentiated cells, a bit like stem cells, each with the potential to form a plant. The callus is bulked up by repeated subculturing until they're sufficient for a production cycle. This takes about 6 or so months. The callus is then transferred to maturation media containing ABA, which promotes embryo maturation. And the developmental pathway for clonal or somatic embryos is very similar to that of a zygotic embryo in the seed. The embryos are then placed onto germination media where they germinate, resulting in emblings. And the emblings are then acclimatized or hardened off to survive ambient conditions. Labs, though, have a finite capacity, so cryopreservation is the long-term storage process whereby callus cultures can be frozen and stored at low temperatures for several years, retaining valuable vintage cell lines until field tested for future use in our breeding program. And finally, all cell lines will be DNA barcoded or fingerprinted as part of FRM regulations. So the area of research that we are focusing on at the moment is cryostorage and DNA fingerprinting, and we have a project with Forest Research. The next slide is a short video tour through the lab, hopefully providing an idea of the activities involved and the scale of our operations. So this is Ian doing some media preparation for all our different processes. The team on the bench. Henrika is excising embryos under microscope. This is the start of cell line initiation. Lucy is bulking up callus. She's selecting the right type of callus for the next stage. This is the first stage of the production cycle, and Marta is making sure that we have a nice uniform layer of callus on the petri dish. The embryos are germinating under red-blue lights. Henrika is pricking out our emblings. And that is our final product, and hardened off embling. So apart from the quicker turnaround time from leach seed to plant when compared to cuttings, somatic embryogenesis also allows us to potentially exploit within family variation once field trials have been conducted on the cell lines. So for clarification, one cell line is one seed, or one seed is one cell line. And again, not unlike brothers and sisters with perhaps different athletic or musical talents, cell lines can differ in their potential performance, even if they come from the same cone. Overall, though, the mean performance of a population will be better and more uniform with each breeding level, as indicated in the schematic, showing the normal curves becoming narrower and steeper, as well as moving towards the right. So clearly there are trade-offs. Both genetic gains and the associated risks increase with decreasing genetic diversity, but these risks can be managed over time by incorporating new cell lines or families, and also by using mosaic planting families in blocks. So in a nutshell, somatic embryogenesis enables us to capture the benefits of traditional vegetative propagation by cuttings and to produce thousands of clones with a known pedigree but without the hassle of producing stock plants and stock hedges. And this results in a quicker turnaround time from elite seed to plants. So for instance, we could select a clone with drought tolerance or disease resistance and bulk it up far quicker than any other technique. And this means that our customers can pivot quickly in response to changing market or environmental conditions. Thank you. That brings me to the end of my presentation. If I can
You
stop
sure?
sharing.
Yeah.
I can't find the stop sharing button. Oh, there it is.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Questions? Any questions in the chat? So a question here from Fanny Wellstead. How important will it be to maintain a record of genetic family in forest planting?
I think that would be important. Obviously, when we sell the plants, we would have a full audit trail back to the original seed. So it should be quite simple to track them further down the line. And I think that that's the best way to exploit the benefits of family or such a narrow gene pool where you can exploit the genetic gains.
Yeah, thank you. Yvonne Edwards is asking, are there any issues with G-rooting?
Not that we have experienced yet, no, I don't think so. They look like perfectly normal seedlings, they just are emblings instead.
And just following on from that, she's asking, are you planning on developing a manufactured seed rather than median transplants?
The main focus for my research at the moment is all on automation of the process. It is a very labor-intensive process, so we're looking at developing bioreactors and looking at automation of some of the processes through robotics or fluidics.
Great, thank you. And Fiona's asking, what species are you working with at the moment?
So we're working on Sitka spruce, obviously, and we're also working on a hybrid spruce. It's a hybrid between white spruce and Sitka spruce. It's a lut spruce, essentially, and grows very well.
Good, good. So, what kind of success are you having? Is this something you'll be bringing to the market soon, or?
We're producing tens of thousands of plants at the moment, and I think that some of them are out in trials, and we have some probably ready for sale. Some of the Sitka spruce.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions, folks? Yeah, Derek McDonald is asking, can customers select on criteria other than growth rate, timber stiffness, etc.? For example, drought resistance.
At the moment, not, simply because we're using the breeding values provided by Forest Research, and drought resistance is not one of them. But if we have a molecular marker for drought resistance, then there's no reason why we couldn't do that further down the line.
Right. And Rodney Shearer's just asking about the 120 million trees per annum figure. Was that based on conifer only or Sitka only? He specifically says.
I think that's both broadleaves and conifers.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions or follow-ups? No. Certainly in a previous life, I was responsible for buying the trees for what you would know as Forestry and Land Scotland, and also I had a part to play in forest research, and we struggled with that with the somatic embryogenesis for spruce. So it's good to see some success. Excellent. So Sheila, I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
And wish you all the best. Success in that. Okay, folks. that's all the presentations. That was quite a lot this afternoon, so maybe that's why Simon's dodged this one, because he saw 5 presenters, but I think it went very well. We've actually finished ahead of time, so I will just do a kind of few thanks, if that's okay, before we go. Just to again thank Scottish Forestry and the Industry Leadership Group for supporting these events. I'd also like to thank the regional committees. They gave up their time to identify what topics and areas that we should focus on for these events. So I'm very grateful to them too. Thanks to Fiona at Cornport, and particularly April, because she puts in a heck of a lot of work to bring these together. And I think we've had another successful event this afternoon. But finally, and most importantly, thank you guys, the audience, for your taking the time out to come and listen to these presentations. And the presentations will be up on the ILG website in due course. So hopefully I haven't missed anything. So I'll say goodbye and enjoy what's left of your afternoon. Okay, and we'll see you again.